In this video, I will use the King Slime from Dragon Quest monsters as a Pokémon in Emerald. The King Slime is one of the bosses in Metal Man's Gate in the original DQM, and he is recruitable using meat. Typical of Slime family monsters, he has a lot of HP, but rather mediocre stats everywhere else. As a Pokémon, he will have 133 base HP, 90 in both attacks, 64 in both defenses, and 70 in speed, for a total of 511. These stats actually resemble a real Gen 3 Pokémon, particularly things like Exploud and Wailord, with high HP and mirrored physical and special stats. Since the DQM games use lookup tables instead of a formula to calculate stat growth, the rate of which can vary greatly at different levels, the conversion won't be exactly faithful. Also, bigger index numbers don't always mean higher stats, and in this case, 15 and 18 are clearly better than 20. His level-up moves are based on his default Cleric skill set in the 3DS remake, which is one of the best sets available to non-boss monsters, and it starts with a Tier 2 spell, Zapple. It also gets Pearly Gates or Grand Cross, which is the only dual-element spell besides Frizz Cracker. It doesn't get the Tier 4 Apple, but it does get both Giga Slash and Giga Gash. The Cleric set contains a lot of healing skills, but most of them don't have equivalents and won't work in Pokémon, so I just gave him Wish and Recover. There is Ingrain and Aqua Ring for the regen effect, but those moves are terrible, only healing 1/16 or about 6% of max HP each turn. Recover is really overpowered in this gen, so I put it at level 78, which I doubt I'll ever reach. I will set up a King Slime with perfect IVs and pre-applied EVs. He will have a neutral nature, because I can edit the base stats directly to make adjustments if necessary. The Slime family corresponds to the normal type in Pokémon, and the King Slime's gimmick is his trait that boosts the likelihood of combination attacks for each slime in your party. This obviously won't work in Pokémon, but since Cleric was originally called Courage in Japanese, I gave him a custom ability that allows all of his normal type attacks to ignore resistances, or basically a better version of Scrappy. His EVs are split evenly between both attacks and speed. He already has enough HP to take a few hits, but he does need extra speed to outrun some of Drake and Steven's Pokémon. I put him in the 1.64 million experience group, like most high HP Pokémon such as Hariyama, Wailord, and Driftbloom. This group levels up the quickest before level 36, but it slows down drastically afterwards. You might have noticed his additional neutral typing. This is to give him stab on normal moves that I changed to typeless for his ability to work. The neutral type has no weaknesses or resistances, so it won't affect his type affinities, meaning he's still immune to ghost and weak to fighting. I fought all the available trainers before Roxanne and reached level 18, thanks to this experience group's low requirements early on. Since Zapple is a Tier 2 single target spell, I made it 65 power, like Spark but without the chance to paralyze. It's quite powerful in the early game, but two of Roxanne's Pokémon are partly ground type, so all I can use against them is Tackle. My custom typeless Tackle does full damage to everything, even ghosts, and it gets stabbed from the neutral typing. This is only possible with the physical special split patch, because the neutral type wasn't assigned a damage category in the original game, and so it would use 0 for the attack stat in damage calculation. Here's an additional rival battle in Emerald. It's optional, but it's easy and gives decent experience. I just gave the rival Torchic so she'd end up with the best team, but that's only relatively speaking since it's still terrible. Picking the girl character doesn't seem to affect the rival's team. There's nowhere to grind on the island, but thankfully, Emerald put a few more trainers in Brawly's gym, and they allowed me to gain a few levels before fighting him. I'm weak to fighting, and Wish takes a turn to work, so the best I could do was try to overpower him. My attack stats were not great, and Zapple couldn't one-shot his Machop, which allowed it to land a critical Karate Chop on me. I knew he would heal, so I took the chance to use Wish, but he critted again. At least he didn't crit a third time in a row. I think the only fighting move his Metatype has is Focus Punch, so all I had to do was attack it. Since his Machop wasn't a one-shot, his Makuhita clearly wouldn't be either, but it was my turn to crit. No change to my moves for the third rival battle, as the types of offensive skills the Cleric set gets are actually quite limited, and some of its skills are too powerful for the early game. Anyway, there wasn't a lot the rival could do, even with her best team. If I replaced any other starter, the rival would have an awful Slugma that never evolves, although Magcargo is arguably worse. Pearly Gates is a powerful dual-element AoE spell that does whoosh and zap damage, so I made it a 90-power special flying move that hits both targets and has a 30% chance to paralyze. Unfortunately, it would be useless against Watson's electric types, meaning that I'd still have to spam Tackle and risk getting paralyzed by static. His Voltorb always has soundproof, but both his Electrike and Manectric have static. I did equip a Cherry Berry, but it only works once, and his Magneton has Thunder Wave. Thankfully, my tackle bypasses Steel type's resistance, and my huge HP made its Sonic Boom almost useless since it always deals 20 damage. Still, I had to get lucky with both paralysis and confusion checks to successfully land a hit, and it would take 3 hits to knock it out. His Manectric basically threw the fight by wasting 3 turns on Howl when its Shockwave was special. It probably didn't have Spark or another physical move besides Quick Attack, since the AI is aware of the physical and special split. Seeing as the King Slime has equal physical and special stats, I gave him both Hyper Beam and Giga Impact. I changed them to typeless, but they still work the same way, requiring a turn to recharge, so I probably won't keep them for long. I just noticed that the first Maxi battle in Emerald is actually a downgrade from Ruby, even though it was already very easy due to his underleveled team. He had a Golbat in Ruby, but here he only has a Zubat. His team might have received some extra EVs in Emerald, but it's still a pointless change. Anyway, he was no threat thanks to my level advantage, and Intimidate from his Mightyena didn't even affect me since most of my moves were special. Flannery's team received a significant buff in Emerald, and she now has a Camerupt that knows Sunny Day, and her Torkoal now holds a white herb to reset the special attack drop from Overheat. Her Numel and Slugma couldn't do anything, but her Camerupt survived my secret power and used Attract, which I never knew it had. I got lucky with the Attract check and rolled high damage on my second secret power, taking it out in one hit. Her Torkoal is usually a big threat in solo runs, but I had Hyper Beam to nuke it this time. Norman's team has also received a change in Emerald, and his first Slacking was replaced by Spinda and Linoone, which are both awful Pokemon. This was the battle where my mediocre offensive stats started becoming an issue, as I could no longer reliably one or even two-shot some major threats without resorting to using Hyper Beam or Giga Impact. I got both lucky and unlucky in this fight. Lucky because his Slacking didn't use counter to punish my mistake of selecting secret power, but also unlucky because it caused paralysis which doubled the power of its facade. It has low special defense, so I should have just nuked it with Hyper Beam to start with. And as you can see, I couldn't even one-shot his Vigoroth with secret power, so this was not looking good for some of the late-game battles. Fortunately, Linoone couldn't naturally learn extreme speed in this gen, and so it was dead weight. As surprising as it might sound, Strength was actually my best move until I learned Double Edge, since the moves I had access to didn't really provide much coverage. Kazap is just a worse Thunderbolt, as all of these spells are pretty bad before Tier 4, and Flying is quite useless in this gen. There simply aren't many fighting types, and both of Steven's Grass and Bug types are part Rock. The rival battle here is just a joke. She only has 3 Pokemon, none of them have fully evolved, and their levels are even lower than some of the wild critters around the area. The incompetent rival is the one thing I really don't like about these Gen 3 games. Winona's Flying Gym received a roster change that could be deadly to a solo run, but it wasn't exactly well implemented. She now has a Swablu that knows Perish Song, which is an instant GG move since she has 5 Pokemon, but it's too fragile and underleveled, and she leads with it. It would be much more threatening if she led with the Skarmory and used its Sand Attack to lower your accuracy first, because if you miss, you lose. That said, these games weren't designed with solo runs in mind, and you can just switch in a regular run. I had Kazap and Pearly Gates to deal with her team, and Hyper Beam to nuke her Altaria, which would certainly survive all of my other moves. This is a last rival battle in Emerald as well, and she still doesn't have a fully evolved starter, but at least she'd have 3 other final form Pokemon by starting with Torchic. What I can't understand is why they gave her 2 flying Pokemon that you just fought at the last gym, when there are so many new Pokemon that could represent the region. For example, Cacturne for the desert, Whale Lord for the sea, Crawdaunt or Whiscash for rivers and lakes, and Chimecho for the mountain, just to name a few. You have to fight Team Magma inside the volcano in Emerald, and Maxi's team is the same as what he had in Ruby, but at lower levels. The moves on his Pokemon are just what they naturally learned at their respective levels, so no TM, Tutor, or Egg moves, and it also means his Camerupt doesn't know Eruption. According to the ROM editor, both his and Archie's teams have the number 150 under EVs, while other boss trainers like the Elite Four and Steven can have up to 255. However, I have no idea what that number means or how their EVs are distributed, and as far as I know, there's no option to edit their EVs directly. Gigaslash does physical bang damage based on the user's level, but level is already a part of the damage formula in Pokemon, so I based it on Cross Chop and made it 20 points stronger. I gave it the Dragon type because the Dragon Lore skill set in Joker 3 uses a maxed bang set to upgrade. The Psychic Gym requires a second Pokémon, and I should have grabbed a flying type so their Claydol wouldn't use Earthquake, but it didn't end up mattering since I had enough HP to tank a few hits. Their Hatu was fragile and went down to a single Kazap. By the way, how do you say that name? Is it Hatu, Zatu, or something like Exatu? I don't know, as I've never seen the anime in English beyond Gen 1. Anyway, my strength was able to two-shot everything else, thanks to stab and unresisted damage, and I had a Chesto Berry equipped to deal with the Lunatone's hypnosis. I could have just grabbed the Shadow Ball TM, but I'd rather avoid relying on TMs for coverage. That said, I will definitely need the Calm Mind TM to have any chance at beating Steven. Despite having 2 leaders, the Psychic Gym was just a regular double battle, not a multi-battle. But following it is a mandatory multi-battle in Emerald with Steven as your partner. It's usually a luck-based fight in a solo run, due to the horrible friendly AI used in this game. For instance, I don't even know why his Metang used Light Screen against 2 physical attackers. The bad partner AI is intentional, to make the multi-battle mode in the battle tower more challenging, but here it's just annoying as it's a forced fight where the enemies love to spam ailments and debuffs. It didn't go too badly this time, since I had Pearly Gates for AoE damage and paralysis, and the enemy AI tends to prioritize the lowest level Pokemon and securing KOs. I also got pretty lucky with the confusion checks, and Steven actually decided to be useful and attack. The Archie battle in the seafloor cavern is exactly the same as in Sapphire. His team might have received some more EVs in Emerald, but again, all I can see in the ROM editor is the number 150 under EVs, and I have no clue what that means or how those EVs are distributed. Either way, it would make no difference due to how underleveled his team was, and he was only using wild Pokemon's move sets. I also had a Persim Berry to deal with confusion, although I did get confused again after the speed drop from Scary Face. Speaking of levels, my leveling speed had already slowed down drastically compared to even the 1.25 million group, and at this rate, I doubt I could ever reach level 78 to learn Recover without a lot of grinding or rare candy pickup luck. Especially since the Sky Pillar's level has been reduced in Emerald to shoehorn it into the story. Juan is probably the most boring gym leader in the game, and his team is hardly any threat at this point. The only potential problem he could cause is confusion from Water Pulse, but that's what the Persim Berry is for. He opens with a useless Love Disc, which is one of the worst Pokemon ever made, existing only for farming heart scales, and it doesn't even evolve into that Sunfish in Gen 5. Whiscash is immune to electric, but it doesn't like to attack, and it turned out that it was within the one-hit KO range of strength. Celio and Crawdon were both one-shot by Kazap, and Kingdra went down to Giga Slash, which miraculously didn't miss, considering that we all know moves like Stone Edge and Focus Blast actually have 50% accuracy. Unless they're used by the AI, then they have 120% accuracy instead. I replaced Strength with Double Edge as I needed the extra power, and even though its recoil damage is a third in this gen, I should have more than enough HP to absorb it. Wally challenges you at the entrance of Victory Road in Emerald, instead of the exit, and this makes the fight easier as you won't be all scuffed up and out of PP. For some reason, his Pokemon are at lower levels than Juan's, but all of them can inflict some sort of ailment or debuff, with the most dangerous being Leech Seed from his Rosalia, especially when you have something with high HP. This time, however, I could easily overpower his team with Double Edge, and still come out of the fight on green HP. If I didn't have my ability though, his Magneton could have walled me and caused problems with Thunder Wave. Or maybe not, since it would still have been two-shot by Double Edge. Here are my stats and moves going into the Pokemon League. Apart from HP, all of my stats are actually pretty mediocre to bad, and I could certainly use more attacks than 171. My moveset is kind of my saving grace, with everything being 90 power or higher, but they don't provide much in terms of type coverage. Sydney was already a problem from the get-go, since I had no way to one-shot his Mightyena, thanks to Intimidate, and that meant I had to eat a sand attack. His AI prioritizes ailments and stat changes on the first turn, and his Mightyena doesn't have swagger. I still managed to win with my accuracy compromised, but as you can see, even after just one stage of accuracy drop, your moves feel like they'd miss half of the time. Unless the accuracy drop is on the AI's side, in which case they can still score a double hit with Blizzard at -6 stages. His Absol doesn't have a single Dark-type move, so Rock Slide is its strongest attack. It's a weird move on a feline Pokemon, but it's a weird Pokemon to begin with, and it's actually based on a divine beast in Chinese legend. Phoebe is the biggest threat among the Elite Four, because her leading Dusclops knows Curse, which is another instant GG move in a solo run. I know for a fact that it doesn't have any special defense EV, so it most likely has EVs in HP or physical defense, or perhaps both. And sure enough, it survived my double edge, which was 180 power after stab, but fortunately, it didn't use curse. Maybe curse doesn't work on normal types in this gen? I'm not sure, as I've never tried it. Apart from her first Dusclops, nothing on her team could pose much threat to a normal type, and since all of the ghosts have terrible HP, I didn't have to worry about the recoil damage from double edge. Glacia has by far the worst team in the league, and due to the shortage of new ice types, 2 of her Pokémon haven't even fully evolved. I know Gen 3 is set in a tropical region, but they still could have added more than 2 families of non-legendary ice types, or at least brought back some previous ones like Cloyster, Piloswine, and Sneasel. Anyway, both of her Celio went down to Kazap, both of her Glalie went down to double edge, and while her Walrein survived a hit, it couldn't do much back. Drake could go either way, depending on how much Giga Slash misses. I used a PP up on it so I can afford to miss once, and I equipped a Cherry Berry just in case his Altaria paralyzes me with Dragon Breath, but I made a mistake and forgot that his Shelgon usually opens with Protect. It wasted one of my PPs, and I missed the Altaria, so the fight clearly didn't start off well. Fortunately, the Altaria decided to use Dragon Dance again instead of attacking me, and I didn't miss either the Kingdra or Flygon. I was out of Giga Slash PP for the Salamence, and I doubt it would be a one-shot anyway after Intimidate. I was faster since I had a third of my EVs in speed, but Kazap did under half, and I couldn't afford to use double edge too much after its Dragon Claw did 80 damage to me. I got incredibly lucky there, as its Citrus Berry healed it just beyond the potion range, which is 25%, and that meant I was able to take it out with Kazap. I replaced Giga Slash with Calm Mind for Wallace, and I will definitely need it for Steven as well. I was still a long way from level 78 for Recover, so a Citrus Berry was my only form of recovery outside of Rest, which I really don't want to use because it makes each fight take forever. Wallace is probably the worst champion across all generations, and it's just a boring fight since all of his Pokémon are the same type. I used Kazap on his Wailord first as I didn't want to eat a full power Water Spout, but the AI picked Blizzard, so I should have just used Calm Mind. But no matter, since he would heal when under 25% HP, and that gave me a free turn to boost. Tentacruel doesn't have much offensive power, so I could afford to set up a second Calm Mind. After that, everything else on his team was basically a sweep. Sure, his Whiscash had enough bulk to survive a hit, but it couldn't do anything. The real challenge of this run was Steven, thanks to my mediocre offensive stats and slow leveling rate in the late game. I filled my party slots with Linoon to pick up rare candies throughout the run, but I was still one level short of 78 for Recover. Gigagash is the AoE version of Giga Slash, so I made it the same as those splitter skills, with 110 power and 85% accuracy. It was just a filler move at this point, as I think all of Steven's Pokémon have maxed physical defense. Pecha Berry is forced in this battle, due to Toxic on his leading Skarmory, and whether I could win without Recover or not largely depended on how many Calm Minds I could get in before it uses Toxic. It sometimes opens with spikes, and it might also just attack when your defense is horrible. After a few tries, I found that I'd need +2 stages to one-hit KO the Skarmory, and +5 for the Armaldo, which clearly has maxed HP or special defense. Getting to +2 on the Skarmory was easy, but the Armaldo has ancient power that might boost its stats, and Slash which has high crit rate. I couldn't lose too much HP on it either, since I had to use Hyper Beam on the following Claydol. Hyper Beam requires recharge, so the Aggron would just take me out with Earthquake. This time, I survived an Earthquake from his Aggron, but he had a Cradily which also required Hyper Beam to one-shot. Look how little Gigagash did, and it would do nothing even without Reflect, so my moveset was clearly not going to work. Before I resigned to grinding another level for Recover, I decided to give it one more try with Pearly Gates, which would do neutral damage to both Claydol and Cradily. It almost didn't work, as the Claydol wasn't a one-shot even at +6, and it managed to set up Light Screen, meaning the following Aggron wouldn't be one-shot by Kazap either. But perhaps the game had had enough of this run as well. His Aggron just threw the fight by using Solar Beam of all things, when I was at +6 special defense. Maybe the AI knew it'd roll a crit, but who knows, and who cares, I was just glad I didn't have to grind. Thanks for watching.